Good morning, friends. My name is Chuck Holtri. I'm from Amazing Facts, and I'm glad to be here with you in Serbia. Just recently, this morning actually, I was traveling from Niš down to Belgrade, and I was driving through some beautiful farmland. I could see the farms on either side of the road, and it reminds me of a passage, a story that I've heard. There was a farmer that really wanted to have a good crop. He did everything he could to make his land the best. He took all the stones and he threw the stones out. And then because of the predators or the animals that would come in and eat the plants, he would build a fence the whole way around it. So he built a fence around it. He had pulled all the stones out. And then in that soil, he did everything he could to make it rich, special soil. He put the right nutrients into the soil. And then he bought the very best plants he could find. And he planted them, each one, planted them in. Made it a beautiful vineyard. It was of grapes. Everything he could to make it bring forth good fruit. He was so looking forward to his grapes. When it was harvest time, he came to it and he looked. It didn't look quite right. And he took one and he tasted it. And it was sour. Very, very bad tasting. And you could say, why? What does that story mean? Well, that story is actually from the Bible. It's found in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. It says this, "Now will I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill." He has a place for grapes and a very, very nutrient-rich soil. "And he fenced it and gathered the stones thereof and planted it with the choicest vine, the very best, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a wine press therein." Of course, you know why you'd make a wine press inside a grape vineyard is because you're expecting to have some really good grapes. It says he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. What a story. Why that story in the Bible? Well, verse 7 tells us, "For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel." That was God's people. He said, "You're like this vineyard. I gave you everything I possibly could, and I came to get good fruit, and the only thing I got from you was bad fruit. Sour fruit, if you will." This brings me to a question. Why do fruit trees have fruit? Why do apple trees have apples? I know it's a simple question, but it's true they have them for the biological function of reproduction. But is there any other reason? Does the apple bear apples so that it can eat apples? Does the banana tree grow bananas so it can eat bananas? Does the orange tree have oranges so it can have orange juice? You say, "Oh, no, of course not." The reason why they have fruit is so that someone else or something else can be blessed by that fruit. The reason you and I bear fruit, Christian fruit, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, meekness, gentleness, goodness. The reason why we have that fruit is not for ourselves, it's so that others can be blessed by it. You know, it says in John chapter 15 and verse 8, you could turn there if you wanted to, John chapter 15, verse 8. It's a story that Jesus tells about a vineyard, about the fact that his Father has vines and that we are the branches on the vine. He says in John 15, verse 8, that herein is his Father glorified, that we bear much fruit. And in that way, we show that we're his disciples. I find it interesting that in bearing fruit, we show that we're connected with God. The proof that we're disciples is based upon the fact that we have fruit. But it doesn't say that we wear fruit. I don't take my fruit and I tie it on me. It would look kind of funny if I tied fruit on me. If you saw an apple tree with apples tied on it, it would look awkward. And eventually those apples would rot and they would smell. But you know, sometimes as Christians, we tie our fruit, our Christian fruit on us. We wear it when we go to church. We put on our kindness and our meekness and our joy, and we come in looking, oh, so good. But the reality is we are wearing fruit. We're not bearing fruit. We're putting the fruit on from the outside, but the fruit's not coming from the inside. What God is looking for today is not fruit that we put on us, but fruit that comes from inside. You know, that takes a miracle. It's not something that you and I can do. I can pretend to have fruit. I grew up doing that. I know what it's like to go to church and say, hi, how are you doing? And look very nice and very kind, but not really have something coming from my heart. That's not what God's looking for. He's wanting something that comes from inside of us, something that's not worn, something that is born in our lives. So 2 things we've looked at with fruit that are very interesting. First, a fruit doesn't bear fruit for itself. It just doesn't. A fruit bears fruit for someone else or something else. That's the first point. Number 2, we've learned that God doesn't want us to wear our fruit, not just to put it on the outside. God wants us to bear the fruit. In other words, it comes from the inside, from our relationship with Jesus Christ. Yesterday, I heard some stories about the history of Serbia. Fantastic stories. Stories of heroes who have done some incredible things to bring liberty to their people, freedom, who even gave up their own lives so that other people could live. And when we look at heroes like that, those national heroes, our hearts are proud as we say, wow, that's awesome. It is good that they would give up of themselves for someone else. But you know, Christians are a lot like national heroes. We don't do things for ourselves. We do things for other people. Our fruit, our kindness, our gentleness, our meekness, it's not for us. It is so that someone else can have something special. You know, the national heroes of Serbia, in my opinion, are great, but they're not as great as the Christians of Serbia who wear the fruit that God has put inside them and bear it out before others, not for themselves, but for other people. I want to be a Christian whose fruit comes from the inside, who comes from a relationship with God. How about you?